Shadows of the evening entangled thoughts. Far from the hustle and bustle of the city, in the vast lawn of an old-fashioned mansion, the sunlight was fading into a pale yellow hue. The shadows of the trees grew longer, merging into one another as if embracing after a long day of exhaustion. Zain, as usual, was sitting on a white marble bench, holding an old coffee mug from which steam had ceased to rise. His eyes were fixed on the red roses blooming in the garden ahead, but his mind was wandering far away, lost in the labyrinth of the past. Zain was a man who had always weighed life on the scale of logic and principles. By profession, he was a successful software engineer and a lover of philosophy. However, when it came to matters of the heart, all his logic and formulas proved utterly useless. For him, the greatest mystery of life was a single question: what is love? In his opinion, love was merely a chemical reaction, an illusion that humans created for themselves to escape loneliness. But was that truly the case? This question often left him restless. Zain Bhai, are you sitting here again, searching for the secrets of the universe? A vibrant, ringing voice shattered his chain of thought. Zain turned around to look. It was Alizé, his cousin and childhood friend. Alizé was a girl full of life, playful, and lively, whose eyes always held a new spark of mischief and whose heart was filled with immense empathy. She was the polar opposite of Zain. If Zain was a silent ocean, Alizé was a rushing, vibrant river. Alizé, can you ever walk in without making a sound? Zain said with a faint smile, placing his mug on the table. And can you ever live a single moment without overthinking? Alizé countered playfully, sitting down beside him. Tell me, what dilemma has taken over your brain today? Zain took a deep breath and looked up at the sky, where stars were slowly beginning to appear. Alizé, I was just wondering how easily a person forgets their own existence for someone else. People stake their ego, their identity, everything in love. What is the ultimate reality of this emotion? Is it just a necessity, or is it a truth? Alizé looked at the deep seriousness spread across Zain's face. A profound emotion flickered in her own eyes, but hiding it behind a laugh, she said, oh wow. So today's topic of discussion is, the question of love. Zain Bhai, to understand love, you don't need a brain, you need a heart. And you have nothing but a brain, your heart is locked away in a safe somewhere. Zain shook his head in disagreement. The heart is just an organ that pumps blood, Alizé. Decisions are made by the brain. And my brain says, why blindly trust something that cannot be seen, something that has no physical form? Because some things are not meant to be seen, they are meant to be felt, Alizé said in a low, serious voice. There was a hidden pain in her tone that Zain failed to perceive. Alizé had loved Zain for years, but in the face of his philosophical and cold nature, she always hid her feelings behind the veil of jokes and laughter. She knew that expressing her heart to Zain would be like banging her head against a brick wall. Footprints of the past and Izzat's entrance. For Zain, this question wasn't just philosophical, there was a past attached to it. During his university days, he had met Izzat. Izzat was a dignified, quiet, and extremely intelligent girl. Their journey, which began with the exchange of books and ideas, gradually transformed into a deep bond. Zain felt he had finally found the answer to his life's riddle. Izzat's way of thinking mirrored his own, she too viewed life through the lens of realism. But then, life took an unexpected turn. Izzat's father passed away, leaving her family under severe financial and social crisis. Izzat was forced to marry a wealthy man who could rescue her family from this disaster. When Izzat said goodbye to Zain, there were no tears in her eyes, only a strange, haunting coldness. Zain, love has its place, but practical life decisions are made based on necessities, not emotions. These final words of Izzat became etched into Zain's heart like an indelible mark. From that day onward, Zain's faith in love vanished completely. For him, love became a weak emotion that melts away at the very first sign of trouble. Izzat left, but she left behind a tormenting question in Zain's mind, the answer to which he was still searching for. Are you lost in the past again? Alizé asked, placing her hand on Zain's shoulder. Zain jolted back to reality. No, just thinking. Alizé, tell me, if you ever love someone and you don't get them, what will you do? Alizé's heart skipped a beat. She looked into Zain's eyes, where there was only a curious question, no emotion. Hiding her pain with a smile, she said, me. I will pray for their happiness. Love doesn't mean possession. If he isn't in my destiny, it doesn't mean my love was false. Love is about giving, not gaining. Zain stared at her face. Alizé's words had always seemed simple and illogical to him, but today, there was a profound truth in her tone that forced him to think. The approaching storm. Time moved on at its own pace. Zayn remained busy with his work, but Alizé's presence had become an indispensable part of his life. Whenever he felt tired or stressed, Alizé would bring him a cup of tea and lighten his mood with her playful chatter. Zayn had no realization that he was slowly becoming dependent on this habit of hers. One evening, Zayn's uncle Alizé's father called Zayn to his room. His uncle's health had been deteriorating for some time, and along with old age, a deep worry was visible on his face. "Zayn son, sit down," his uncle said, straightening himself up on the bed. Zayn sat beside him and took his hand. "Yes, uncle, tell me. How is your health now?" "Health will keep fluctuating, son, life is unpredictable. I want to talk to you about something important," he said, taking a deep breath. "You know Alizé is my only daughter, she is my life. My age and health no longer allow me to be careless about her future. I want her to get married while I am still alive." A strange jolt went through Zayn's heart. He felt as if the ground was slipping from beneath his feet. Alizé's marriage escaped his lips involuntarily. "Yes, son," his uncle replied. "An old friend of mine has a son named Hammad who is settled in Canada. It's a very good family, and the boy is well educated and capable. They have asked for Alizé's hand. I want you to help me with this matter. Talk to Alizé, because she never rejects what you say." Zayn's brain went entirely numb. A storm of conflicting thoughts erupted in his mind. Alizé will leave, from this house, from his life. Those cups of tea, that laughter, those playful arguments, everything will end. Asterisk. "What happened, Zayn? You didn't say anything," his uncle asked, seeing him completely silent. Zayn composed himself and forced a smile. "Yes, uncle, that is wonderful news. If Hammad is a good guy, we must definitely consider it. I will talk to Alizé." When Zayn walked out of that room, he felt a strange, suffocating weight in his chest, a pain that none of his philosophy books had ever defined. That night, it was raining heavily. The raindrops falling from the sky created a melancholic melody against the window panes. Zayn stood on his room's balcony, watching the rain, but his mind was elsewhere. Alizé came into his room. As always, she held 2 cups of tea, but today her face lacked its usual mischief, instead, it wore a heavy, quiet stillness. She knew what her father had discussed with Zayn. "Have some tea," she said, placing the cup on the table. Zayn turned around and looked at her. A heavy silence stretched between them for a few moments, broken only by the sound of the pouring rain. "Uncle spoke to me about you, Alizé," Zayn finally broke the silence. "I know," Alizé replied, keeping her gaze lowered. "Hammad is a good guy, he lives in Canada. Uncle wants you to agree to this proposal. What do you think?" Zayn tried to keep his tone as detached and emotionless as possible, hiding behind a hollow shell of logic. Alizé raised her head and looked straight into Zayn's eyes with her large, expressive eyes. Tears were brimming in them, but her voice was remarkably steady. "Zayn bhai, are you asking for my opinion, or are you handing down an order?" I am only thinking about your well-being, Alizé. Having a good life partner is essential in life," Zayn said, averting his eyes. Alizé smiled bitterly. "A life partner? Zayn bhai, are you truly that blind, or are you just pretending to be? For years you have been asking me what love is, what the question of love is. Today, let me give you the answer." She took a step forward. "Love is when someone stays devoted to you despite your cold-hearted nature. Love is when someone smiles through every bitter word you throw at them. Love is when a person dedicates their entire life to someone, knowing very well they will get nothing in return. I have loved you, Zayn. Always, from childhood until today." Zayn stood frozen like a statue. Alizé's words felt like molten glass pouring into his ears. He had never imagined that Alizé harbored such deep, profound feelings for him. "But you," Alizé's tears were now streaming down her cheeks. "You sit there with the doors of your heart locked tightly. You think everyone is like Izzat. For the sake of your ego and your fears, you never even glanced at my love. And now, when my father has made a decision, you are so easily advocating to hand me over to someone else." Alizé, Zayn ran out of words. All his logic, his philosophy, and his grand theories crumbled like a wall of sand before Alizé's tears. "That's enough, Zayn bhai," Alizé wiped her tears and stepped back. "You must have found your answer by now. Love is not a question, love itself is the answer. But to find this answer, the heart needs to be alive. I will never go against my father's wishes. If he wants me to marry Hammad, I will. Because my love is not so weak that it cannot make a sacrifice. With that, Alizé walked out of the room, leaving behind 2 cooling cups of tea and a man whose entire existence was shattered from within. The awakening of the heart and facing the truth. After Alizé left, days and nights became a living torment for Zain. Wedding preparations had begun in full swing. Hammad and his family had arrived in Pakistan, and formal meetings between the families were taking place. Alizé smiled and worked in front of everyone, but the spark in her eyes, the very spark that used to be the anchor of Zain's life, was completely gone. Zain tried to drown himself in work, but wherever he went, he could only remember Alizé's words, her laughter, and her heartbreaking confession. He would stare at his laptop screen for hours, but all he could see was Alizé's tear-stained face. One evening, as Zain was passing by his uncle's room, he overheard a conversation between his uncle and Hammad. "Hammad son, Alizé is a very sensitive girl. I just want you to keep her happy always," his uncle's voice carried a father's desperate plea. "Uncle, please don't worry. Alizé will be my wife, and she will have every luxury in Canada. But to be honest, I feel she isn't happy with this marriage. Her body is here, but her mind is somewhere else. Is there something I should know?" Hammad asked sincerely. His uncle fell silent, then let out a heavy sigh. "Son, Alizé has never said a word. She has always been an obedient daughter. Even if there is something in her heart, she will bury it within herself forever." Standing outside, Zain's heart wrenched with pain. He realized what a catastrophic mistake he was making. Because of his lingering bitterness over Izzat and his own philosophical illusions, he was about to destroy 2 lives. Alizé loved him, and what about him? Did he not love Alizé? He asked his own heart. If Alizé goes to Canada, will he ever be able to live happily? The answer came from deep within, number. Without Alizé, he would become a walking corpse. That cup of tea, those arguments, that playful banter, that wasn't just Alizé, it was the very soul of Zain's life. He finally understood that love wasn't a chemical reaction or an illusion, it was a living, breathing reality standing right in front of him in the form of Alizé, whom he was losing to his blind logic. It was the night of the Mehndi. The entire house was illuminated with brilliant lights, traditional wedding songs filled the air, and an atmosphere of celebration surrounded everyone. Dressed in a beautiful green and yellow outfit, with intricate henna applied to her hands, Alizé sat amidst the crowd, but her face was pale, like someone being led to a sacrifice. Zain stood far away from the crowd, watching her from a corner. His heart was no longer willing to remain silent. The question of love had finally been resolved, and the answer stood right before him. He slowly walked over to his uncle, who was busy greeting guests. "Uncle, I need to talk to you about something very important, right now." Zain's voice held a determination that had never been seen before. Seeing the intense gravity on his face, his uncle took him to a private room. "What is it, Zain? Why look so worried?" Zain took a deep breath and folded his hands before his uncle. "Uncle, I have come to beg for a lifetime of happiness. I have made countless mistakes throughout my life, lost in my own philosophies, but today I cannot turn my back on the truth. Uncle, I love Alizé. I cannot bear to see her belong to anyone else." His uncle looked at him in utter shock. "Zain, what are you saying? Now, when the wedding is only 2 days away? I know I am late, uncle. I was a fool who couldn't hear the voice of his own heart. But if I don't speak up today, all 3 of our lives will be ruined. Alizé loves me, and I will die without her. For God's sake, stop this wedding. Give Alizé's hand to me. I promise I will give her every happiness in the world." Tears streamed down Zain's face. At that exact moment, the door opened and Hammad walked in. There was no anger on his face, only a profound understanding. "Uncle," Hammad said, stepping forward. "I was standing outside and heard everything. What Zain said is the truth. I have always seen a deep sadness in Alizé's eyes, and today I understand the reason behind it. Love cannot be forced, uncle. If Alizé's heart belongs to Zain, I don't want to commit a sin by forcing this marriage." The uncle looked at Hammad, then at Zain, whose entire being had become a plea. Tears welled up in the old man's eyes as well. He pulled Zain into a warm embrace. "You foolish boy, if only you had said this earlier, none of this pain would have happened. I have always considered you my own son, and who could be better for Alizé than you?" The wedding hall remained the same, but the groom changed. When Alizé found out that Zain had confessed his love in front of everyone and that Hammad had gracefully stepped back, she felt as though she had been granted a new lease on life. The tears in her eyes instantly transformed into pearls of joy. After the nikah marriage ceremony, when the two sat together on the lawn of that old mansion where Zayn used to sit alone and brood, the night sky looked entirely different. The soft silver moonlight flooded the surroundings, and the fragrance of roses filled the gentle night breeze. The scent of henna from Alizé's hands drifted into Zayn's senses. She offered him a cup of tea, a mischievous smile playing on her lips, and asked, "So, Mr. Philosopher, tell me now, is the question of love solved, or is there still some mathematical formula left to figure out?" Zayn placed the cup of tea on the table, took her henna-stained hand into his own, and looking deep into her eyes, replied, "Love has no formulas, Alizé. Love is a surrender, a faith so absolute that it liberates a person from their own ego. My question was flawed because I was trying to solve it with my brain. You taught me that love is not a question, love itself is the answer. And my answer is you." Alizé rested her head against Zayn's shoulder, and this time, her heartbeat was completely at peace. The night grew deeper, but a new, radiant chapter of their lives, filled with unconditional love, had just begun, a chapter where no questions were left unanswered.